I mean, Simone, what are the details that are emerging? Looking at some of the important market metrics, there's not a lot to work with outside of the oil prices. The currency forward markets are closed. The stock markets are closed. But initially, what is the framework that is crystallizing here?
Yeah, not a lot yet in those markets, but we are expecting some kind of important move today. Look, right now, the only real cohesive answer that we have about what has happened is a reopening of those borders, land, air, and sea borders between Qatar and Saudi Arabia. And so what we're going to be watching for this GCC summit is what is the uptake from the other members of that boycotting bloc, the UAE, Bahrain, and Egypt. Are they going to sign on to a deal? And then what does that deal look like? So far, we're getting some positive statements from the likes of Anwar Gargash. He's the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs for the UAE. He said on Twitter that he expects the summit to restore Gulf cohesion and says we are going in the right direction. He also called the summit likely to be historic. From the parties that we know are involved so far, Mohammed bin Salman has also had some happy comments towards this move. We do expect also to see Jared Kushner in attendance at the summit. Also, we know that Egyptian president has been invited, so we'll have to see who exactly turns up to this crucial meeting in Al Ula.
In the sort of early bit of this standoff between Qatar and some of the Gulf neighbors, there was a list of demands that basically, if complied with, would lead to reconciliation. I mean, what from that list remains? What are the variables that could come into play to get a buy-in sort of from the whole group?
Well, everything on that list remains. As far as our sources are telling us, we've moved well beyond the 13 demands, so that no longer the focus here. A couple things that are likely to come into play. One are lawsuits that Qatar has with international organizations, like a civil aviation organization run by the UN, the UN, also a WTO complaint that Qatar had made against Saudi Arabia. So far, the rulings had been in the favor of Qatar, but we are watching to see whether Qatar will drop those suits. That is what some of our sources are telling us will happen. We're also looking to see if there's any change in sort of the foreign policy prescriptions that Qatar will have. The UAE and Qatar have found themselves in particular on a lot opposite sides of conflicts, particularly in East Africa. We could also see potentially some discussion about how the role that Iran and Turkey will play in the region. Also, finally, we do hear that these countries likely to end the media attacks on each other, though exactly what that means in practice still to be determined.
At the same time, we're getting new warning signs from Iran, which sees an oil tanker traveling between Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates yesterday. The South Korean government has been on the phone for the last few hours with key players in this. How much does this escalate an already tense situation in the Gulf?
I mean, clearly, any headline here, any tanker situation going to be closely watched. But, you know, what we are hearing is that this may be more about Iranian assets stuck in South Korea amid these worldwide sanctions rather than sort of ongoing disputes between the Gulf region and particularly with the United States. But clearly what we're seeing from Iran is just ramping up the pressure, often in expected ways. The country saying over the weekend and just yesterday beginning to enrich uranium to a higher purity grade. That part of that's something that's going to draw sort of international unhappiness, unrest. But if we can get to that Biden inauguration, we're 2 weeks away, we could see a U.S. policy towards Iran shift pretty markedly. Again, Biden's administration wants to rejoin that nuclear deal. So we could see a big move in there, but for now we're just biting our fingernails, hoping for peace here.